Hey, and welcome to the XYLO Drill section of the Civilized variations of this Hiden Denki Densho. And XYLO, the root of that word actually means wood. If you look it up in the dictionary, XYLO is a term for wood. Now, what I had in mind for my technique here is that I would have multiple spindles lined up, as you can probably see on the side here. And it kind of reminds me of a xylophone, because what you have are sections of wood all lined up next to each other. So it reminded me of the musical instrument. So I termed this one the XYLO Drill, just by how it looks. But this one is going to go down as nothing ventured, nothing gained, but like Thomas Edison before us, he knew 1,000 things that didn't work, as opposed to the one thing that can work. So I learned a lot from trying to get this one going, and I fell far short of my goal of what I wanted to really accomplish. But if everything was easy and nothing was a challenge, life really wouldn't be worth living then, would it? So I've learned a lot, and I see that the challenge is still before me of my goal of what I wanted to accomplish. But you should definitely see how all of this went down, and the challenge is also laid before you. So if you could do better than me, that would actually be great, because then you would have something to teach me. So, and I think that's awesome. All right, so onward and upward with the XYLO Drill, and I hope you get a lot out of it too, as much as I did. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so I'm ready to get started on creating the XYLO Drill. This is the pressure lever brace of the giant drill. It's upside down. Took it off the Phyre Dojo. It's sitting on my table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a brace here that runs along this side, the front. And as you can see, it's a length of 2 feet. Here the tape measure takes up the last 3.5 inches, but it's 24 inches across. So, and what we're going to have is 10 socket holes going across here on a brace. So what I'm going to do with the holes, though, is I'm going to be using copper caps. Here I have a dozen, and I have to, well, they start off flat. And what I have here is a metal die, and what you do with this is, this is actually originally for flint knapping, for stone tool making. And you take a copper cap, and this one's measured exactly to 3/4 of an inch, and it sits in this die here like this, and you put the die in and you smack it down, and it turns round, which I'll show you in a minute. But what you do with the rounded cap after that is you fill it with lead and you put a handle on it, and then you use it as a billet for hitting like obsidian and stone like that, for making stone tools. So 10 of those are going to be for the XYLO Drill, for socket holes. And when I'm going to do that, I'm going to pound that on this railroad track section, which is I use for an anvil. Okay. And what I have here are 1 1/4 inch dowels, which are 4 foot long, and what they're going to do is make the reloading spindles. The spindles, I think, are going to be 18 inches long, possibly 16 to 18 inches. I haven't figured that out yet, but I will. So I'm going to cut these down on the circular miter saw to the size that I need, but I'm going to do that later. First I'm going to prepare the caps, then I'm going to get a 2x4 pine stud, and I'm going to take a Forstner bit and I'm going to drill holes for these caps. After these are rounded, I'm going to cut them in half this way around, and because I don't need this to be this long, what will happen is because the pressure lever brace is on an angle like this, these edges, when they move up and down, are going to cut into the side of the reloading spindle, and I don't want it to do that. So I'm going to shorten the length by half once I've rounded it out. Alright, so I'm going to show you real quick how to round out these copper caps, and I'm going to get the pine stud and start drilling holes after I cut these in half. Alright, be right back. Okay, so how this works is we take one of the copper caps, and that fits in the seat of the die. That'll go on top of the anvil. The die then fits inside the cap. Right? We take our small sledgehammer. You could use a real heavy, large sledgehammer if you want to. That really makes short work of it. Sometimes you only need one stroke if you're going to use a real sledge. So this will probably just take a few. So here we go. Alright, and there we go. Let's round it off. Let's do one more real quick. Fit one right in there, just like that. And that's 2. So now I'm going to do the rest. I have a dozen, and then we're going to move along. Okay, be right back. Okay, so all the caps are done. So the next thing I'm going to do is mark the caps as to where I'm going to cut it in half. Okay. And this is really just a rough estimate as to where I'll cut, but really I'm just eyeballing it. And that's 2. Alright. And then after this, I'm going to take the Dremel with the metal cutting bit, and I'm going to cut all these in half. Alright, next. Okay, so I've pretty much measured out where the caps are going to get cut. I did that with the black marker. So now what we do is we take a Dremel with a metal cutting blade tip, and I'm going to be holding the copper cap with some long nose pliers, and I'll be cutting the cap like that. I'll be cutting the cap like that. So I'm going to go through all of these caps now with the Dremel, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I cut the caps, copper caps, with the Dremel, and as you can see there are 12. The caps are here, and the rings that are left are here. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to take a small round file, and I'm going to take off all the burrs and sharp edges, including the rings. And the rings, I'll just give them to my daughter because she'll just like to play with them. Alright, so I'm going to do that and we'll be right back. So actually I traded in my small round file for a sanding bit on the Dremel to make my work a little quicker and easier. So 12 copper rings for my daughter, and I only need 10 copper caps, but I have 2 extra just in case, you never know. So the edges, the burrs are taken off and they're not sharp. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1 1¼ inch diameter dowels, which are 4 foot long, and I'm going to make them 16 inches in length for reloading spindles. I'm going to cut more than 10 just in case I mess up drilling the spindle reload socket holes. So I'm going to cut these now and get them prepared. Alright, so here we go. I have extra. So the next thing I'm going to do is the pressure lever brace is 2 feet across. So from this pine stud, this 8-foot 2x4, I'm going to cut a 2-foot section, 24 inches, and eventually I'm going to cut a base out of it too. As you can see, it's snowing outside. And so we get that done, start drilling the holes, and epoxy the copper caps in. Alright, let's keep going. So I decided to cut a 30-inch piece of the 2x4 instead of a 24. I wanted to leave extra room because of the hose clamps that are going to go on the reloading spindles. So here we have 10 spaces laid out for the caps to go in after I drill 3/4 inch diameter Forstner bit holes into these marks. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I drilled the holes with the, actually it's a 1-inch Forstner bit, and I'm going to put the caps in there. I'm going to epoxy them in, and we're going to let that set, and we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, next. So I've measured out the 24 mark here and here on my 30-inch brace. And so what I'm going to do is epoxy this to the top here, and then I'm going to screw it in. So as you see, I've epoxied in all of the caps. There's 10. And they seem to fit well. Alright, so I'm going to glue this in and then screw it in, and then we'll work on our spindles. So I've taken the clamps off after it was dry, the glue, and as you can see, I've buried the screws in to the brace, and so that's well secure there to the pressure lever brace, so that's not going anywhere. Alright, so next part, spindles. So I had to change something. The wood that I was using for the dowels was just too soft, so I went back to the hardware store and I got me some pine closet poles. They're 1¼ inch in diameter as well, and they drilled much better. The drilling on the softer woods, the holes would just go every which way and wouldn't stay centered. But the pine did a great job of staying centered. I used a 5/8 inch diameter Forstner bit for the drilling, and as you can see, the hose clamps are on. That's to keep the wood together in case it accidentally splits and flies apart. That's always something that I do when I drill holes like this, is put the hose clamps around. So the next part is to point up the brace ends, which are up here, and then cut and quarter the bottoms. to receive the spindle reloads. Alright, let's keep going. Okay, so I took the hose clamps off, and I measured down 1.5 inches from the top, and what I'm going to do is put these on the bandsaw and cut them into cones on top, and then I'm going to sand them down. And then after that, I'm going to cut and quarter the bottoms. Alright, so let's do that, be right back. So I cut the tops on the bandsaw. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is cut and quarter the bottoms, and then sand the tops down on the belt sander. Okay, be right back. Okay, so I cross cut the bottoms of the for the base reloads, and I sanded the tops of the brace ends of all the spindles. And what I did was I'm measuring the height of the pressure lever brace, and screwed it in to the height that I need for these 16-inch spindles. Okay. Now you have to include the measurement of the base itself, as well as the base reloads, which are going to go in the bottom. So even though this looks even now, I want it to actually be on a higher angle, a little higher. What I mean is angling this way once the base reloads and the spindle reloads are placed in. That's going to be angled up a little higher like this, because what I want is when it starts to burn down, it needs to become level again, and then only slightly below that. So what I need is the golden mean of this going this way. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is measure out the places on the base where the base reloads go, measure out the reloading base for all the places where the little 1.5 by 1.5 inch pine base reloads are going to be placed, all 10 of them. And then we fit the spindle reloads into the reloading spindles. Alright, next. Okay, so I've started measuring out the places where the base reloads are going to go. They're all 3-inch spaces, 1 through 10. Now the first thing I need to do is start creating the barriers for where the base reloads are going to go. And I'm going to do that with a 3/8 inch square piece of wood, cut to the appropriate size pieces. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue these two in, just to get that started, and then I'm going to do the rest. Alright, be right back. Okay, so here I've created the reloading base, and I've taken a square section 3/8 inch across, and I've cut them in pieces and made spaces for all the reloads to go into. As you can see, they all fit rather nicely. All the spacers have been epoxied in, so they're not going anywhere. And we have 10. Alright. So the next things to do are to pre-drill the holes into the base reloads. And the spindle reloads are going to be 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to make the holes here 1/2 inch, which is a little smaller than 5/8. And that way then I'll sand it to fit the 1/2 inch hole. Cut the notches in. I'm going to take out the dead space centers out of the spindle reloads when I cut them. They're going to be about an 1.75 inches in length, because the space inside the reloading spindle is about 3/4 inch. So the spindle reload is actually going to stick out about 1 inch. Alright, so let's get that done. Come right back. Okay, so I think we're ready to get started on our XYLO drill. Here's our base. We're going to start off doing 2 spindles only. They are 16 inches long. Okay, they are torque spindles, and the reason for the height is because what we have here is a modified Egyptian style, and as you can see, as it wraps around, the bow is going to need to remain on an angle in order for the cord to not overlap itself, and so that it doesn't rub up against itself as well. So I need plenty of height in order for the cord to ride up and down. We are using 3/8 sisal cord. In past attempts, just using 3/8 inch rope. That just frays on the first shot, and we don't like that. But the sisal has been holding up on countless attempts without any fray at all. Actually, it's pretty tough stuff. As you can see, there's nothing in the notches. We're using poplar dowels, 5/8 inch, and our standard pine base reloads. So the core 2 is poplar and pine. We're going to fill the notches with a little bit of dust. Just a little bit, because I want some of the dust to build up on its own inside. Okay. What we have up top here is not only the weight of the pressure lever brace itself, which is I never really measured it, but it's probably in itself close to well, it's definitely over 5 kilos. What we have inside, though, is 20 kilos. Now, if you can imagine, that's over 10 kilos per spindle for surface area. And today I'm going to introduce a brand new device to you, and I call it the short spear bow. A short spear, this one's only 6 feet long, and the length of the bow is just about arm's length. Okay, let's start at the top. The top has a 3/8 inch hole in it with a knot. Now, out the back comes the sisal, and it's attached to a link. Okay, so let's go back. It goes through the hole to the knot, so it can't go any farther. Here the rope twists around the spindles and comes back inside here midway, about midway through the spear bow, comes up and through the link. Now this is for cinching down. So what I'll do is I'll pull the tightness, the tension here, guide it through, that holds some of the tension, and then pulling it through the link, I cinch it down some more for tension, and then what I do is I bring it all the way down here to the very end, and it goes through a hole here, 3/8 inch, and as I pull it through, that holds the tension in itself. Now, in order to do this, I need to keep the bow at an angle so the cord doesn't not only bind on itself, it doesn't rub against itself and start fraying. So with that, I'm going to put the camera on the stand, And we're going to start doing our 2 spindle technique here. Alright, now I'm really going to go for length of time in a sense. So we got to do my yeah, by the way, the holes are pre-drilled on the base reloads with a 1/2 inch Forstner bit, and so I sanded down the spindle reload at the very tip so that it matches the 1/2 inch, because 1/2 inch is smaller than 5/8 diameter. And I took out the dead space center of the spindle reloads with a regular drill bit. Alright, so we have to do our mating, warm up, and ignition. So as you can see, I'm using 2 hands. Use the bow. Use the whole length of the bow as much as possible. Keep going, keep going. So this is the short spear bow. As we add spindles, the spear is going to have to get longer. Okay, let's have a look. Well, we got 1 coal. But the other one didn't seem to light. So we have to get 2 to light. And then what we're going to do is go to 4 after that. Alright, so let's try 2 again and see what happens. Okay, so we're ready to try to begin to do 2 spindles again. Okay. And as you can see, there's dust in the notch, but they're not smoking. I tried mating it a little bit, moving the bow back and forth, so it's a little brown, as you can see, but they're not ignited. All right. So ready to give it a shot again. Okay. Again, I need to warm it up and get it ignited. The weight is the same. Actually, let's add add 4 kilos, just for laughs. Okay. So let's get this warmed up. Torque spindles work very well because it's not that hard to move them back and forth, and it allows for me to have more energy to go over a longer period of time. The spindle reloads, as you can see, are wearing down pretty quick. So let's have a look. Oh, we got 2 coals this time. All right. Okay. So we're ready to move on to 4. This one rolled out here, as you can see. This one's still in the notch. This one kicked out all the way out here for some reason. Well, that's 2. So let's start moving on to 4. All right, let's keep going. So we're ready to try or we're getting ready to try our 4 spindle XYLO drill. And I started to number them. So we're going to go odds one side, even on another. So our first 2 that we got coals on were 1 and 2. So as we expand outward, we're going to go 3 and 4 this way. As you can see, it's a modified Egyptian. There's 2 turns around with the sisal. Again, we're still using the short spear bow. Now what I'm going to do is show you how I attempt to load the spindles into the brace all by myself. So as you can see, I have a short sapling here used as a, I can't really call it a brace. Let's call it a bracer. How about that? A bracer for the brace. Because its function is to brace the brace. Right? Alright, so hopefully I can attempt to do this as smoothly as possible. Alright, so the first thing I do is I have my spindles lined up on the cord, and then I use my back to lift up the brace and remove the bracer. So I'll move the spindles near the position of their respective base reloads. And I'm going to lift up the brace, remove the bracer, and we're going to try to put the spindle reloads into their base reloads and try to put them in their sockets as well. see how well that goes. Okay. So we did that fairly well. I get better with practice. Again, you can see the reason why it's necessary to have long spindles, because the angle is going to need to be maintained with the bow. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and add some more weight. So we have 20 kilos plus 4 kilos plus another 4 kilos plus 13 more kilos up top. That might be too much, but we'll take it easy. So I have to get the tension back on my bow. So I'm going to angle it upward a little bit. Oh, that's not in the socket, is it? Okay. And let's pull that tight, as tight as we can get it. And then we tighten it through the link. Pull that down, tighten it through the bottom. Let's see if that's fairly snug. That looks pretty good, but it's pretty obvious to me that the length of the stroke is shortened because the space is taken up by 2 more spindles. So after these 4, I need to get the long spear bow to get that, I think, to be able to go. Otherwise the stroke is going to be too short, which of course is going to waste a lot of energy. Let's throw some dust in there, just a little bit. Oh, another thing that I changed is that I made the spindle reloads 2.5 inches instead of 1 3/4 inches. So that's a lot higher, because it seems that they burn down fairly fast. So I made them longer so that I could spin them longer and go longer. I think we're ready to give it a shot. Let's get this. It's not even mated yet, so we're going to get it mated and warmed up. Thank goodness these are torque spindles, because these would then be really, really hard to spin. All right. I know I'm not done, just having a look to see how we're doing. Well, what happens is they are obviously different heights on a very small scale. So some are going to burn more than others. So it turns out that 1, 2, and 4 were burning first, and 3 over here was just getting started. I'm sorry. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 is over here. All right, so they're mated, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to warm it up again, and hopefully get them ignited. Be right back. Okay, so we're back, and we're going to try our 4 spindle. As you can see, the notches are not smoking. There's just a little bit of dust in there to take up the space. And I'm going to move to the other side, and we're going to see if we can't get 4 going here. First we're getting it warmed up, since we know they're mated. Now here really the trick is to see how long I can actually keep going. Let's have a look. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 3. We need a 4th. Alright, so we're ready to try 4 spindles again, and we just got 3, but we didn't get 4. Now there's nothing in the notches. I did try mating it a little bit, so there's a little bit of dust in there, but you can see that they are not ignited. There is no smoke. We're still doing a core 2 of poplar and pine. I've already tightened up the bow, so let's see how this goes. Now I've tightened up the bow, which means that when I put it somewhat level, it tightens up even more, like a lever. So what I'm going to do though too is secure the Phyre Dojo, remember with the giant drill? I had to secure it because it was really rocking back and forth. I'm going to have to do that again. So I'm going to do that soon. But meanwhile, let's see if we can get 4. So we have to warm it up and ignite it. I think 1 is burning into the notch. I think 1 burned into the notch. So again, I have 3 coals and 1 burned into the notch. How frustrating. Alright, so there's 1, number 4, number 2, number 1, And number 3 over there burned into the notch. So 3 coals and 1 misfire. Oh. So close. So close. Alright, let's try again. So I made a few changes. Well, for one thing, if I didn't mention already, I've made my spindle reloads 3 inches long, because what I don't want is for them to burn down quickly and run out of time. Actually, if I need to go longer, I don't want my spindle reloads running out of material. So I made them almost twice as long, because they were 1 3/4 and now they're 3 inches long. Another thing I'm going to do is, because one of them burned out into the notch, is I'm pre-mating everything specifically. So I'm taking my little bow, and one at a time I'm putting them in and specifically mating each and every spindle together. In fact, I've even numbered each base reload to its respective spindle, reloading spindle. Alright, so another thing is I'm changing not just the technique, I'm changing the tactics. So I've changed strategies. So if I want to get 4, I'm going to use 6 spindles, because by using 6 spindles I increase my odds of getting 4. Because if I stick with 4, I can only hope to get 4, all 4. So by using 6, hopefully I'll get 4. And I think we're going to continue that train of strategy into 8, using 8 in order to get 6. And then I don't know if we're going to get 10. I'm pretty hopeful that we can, but we're going to see. So at this point here, with 6 spindles, we're now going to use the long spear bow. And this one's made out of rattan. So the part here that I hold, if you can see this black mark here, all the way down to the bottom, that's 30 inches. So that's 2.5 feet of handle, and the rest is all bow. And so the first one we're going to do is 6 spindles around for that, and then 8, and then 10. All right, it's a little more flexible than I would like, because the short spear bow is pine and doesn't really have any flex to it. All right, so I'm going to wrap these spindles up now in the cord of the long spear bow and get them inside the pressure lever brace, and we're going to give it a shot. Okay, be right back. Okay, so we're ready to try our 4 spindle, which is actually 6. Who knows, maybe we'll get 6 and get lucky. But there's nothing in the notches. I don't even have dust in the notches. So you can see they're not smoking. I tried mating them a little bit to kind of get them even. And I had to kind of raise up the base reloads on 1 or 2 by some millimeters in order to get them all as even as possible. But they still might pop out anyway. So we'll see how it goes. So this is the long spear bow. And let's see how we do. My biggest frustration is them popping out, really. Also, I've sheared up the Phyre Dojo I put some support beams on all four corners so it doesn't rock back and forth anymore, much like it was with the giant drill, to keep it really from shaking back and forth. So this is going to be a really long stroke. So it's not just my arms that do the stroke, but my legs. So I have my arms and my legs going back and forth to get the entirety of the stroke. So my handle here is only 30 inches long at the most. So let's try and hopefully get this going. Tighten that up. Oh, here's our first complication. Frustrating. A little bit of dust, nothing exciting, but I definitely have to fix my first complication there. Now you can see why the spindles need to be so long. It's because of the ride up and down. So let me fix that and we'll come right back. Okay, so I've lined everything up again. Again, you can see the necessity for the tall spindles because of the wraps going up on an angle and having to hold the bow on an angle. So let's try again, shall we? Stop for a second and tighten up. And keep going. Let's see if we have anything. I'm wondering if I don't have enough weight. Well, number 5 barely has any dust. 3 and 1, not a lot, but 2, 4, and 6 have more dust. So I'm going to stop for a second, catch my breath. So I think the even side, 2, 4, and 6, has more weight on that side than 5, 3, and 1. So these obviously burned, but this side less so. So let me make some slight adjustments. I'll come back and try it again. I'm going to leave everything exactly the way it is though. Okay, so I adjusted everything again. Hopefully everything is going to stay together this time. And hopefully the friction is going to be a little bit more even this time out. So let's see how this goes. Warmed up again. I see number 6 is lit. Number 1 is lit. Number 4 is lit. So we have 3. Number 1, number 4, and number 6. So can I light number 2, 3, and 5? Can that be done? There's only one way to answer that question. I see my bow got a little low. Let's have a look again. Whew. So I didn't light number 3, number 5, and number 2. Maybe one more shot to try. Since 6 is already done, let's take that one out. Number 2 is done. Number 1 is lit. So what we need is number 5, number 3, and number 4. All right, let's give it the old college try. Nope. All right then. So what we're going to do is we're going to let it go. So we got 3 at the most, on our XYLO drill. And what I think I'm going to do is leave this as a challenge for other people to get more than 3. A challenge for me too, as well in the future, since I'm already set up to try to get this done. But what we're gonna do is move on to our next section, which is the yo-yo drill, and you're really gonna like that one. All right, so that one's still burning. So let's see how far we can go with many other things. Let's keep going. All right, let's keep going.